Hi, my name's Eloise.
And my name's Kieran, and welcome to
the Sparkly Medics podcast.
In this podcast, we hope to bust some medical myths,
Talk about all the hot gossip,
and hopefully have some fun on the way.
We just want to make a quick disclaimer that everything we talk about in this podcast is our medical opinion and not medical advice. If you have any queries or concerns, please consult your local GP.
And if you enjoy this podcast, please save, like, and subscribe.
Hi everyone, today's podcast is focusing on mental health and more specifically men's mental health, where we have a fantastic guest who talks about all things to do with men and their mental health, as well as the focus on Movember. Podcast is obviously talking about sensitive issues and sensitive topics, so if you feel like it's not for you, skip on and check back in with us for our next episode, our Christmas special. Otherwise, if you feel like you need to contact us regarding some of the things mentioned in this podcast, feel free to talk to us on social media. We have also linked every charity that is discussed in this podcast within the description box on the platform that you're listening on. I'm going to go with November and male, like men.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this episode because it's something that I feel like I'm going to learn a lot from, and hopefully you guys will too. We have to say a bit of a disclaimer beforehand.
Yeah, so 1 in 4 people actually experience mental health issues each year. And mental health is the second largest source of burden of disease in England, and is more common than and can be more impactful than other health conditions. So one of the things I was reading was that mental
do you know what
health
Movember stands for,
72
Eloise?
million working days lost in the UK and costs the government 34.9 billion every year. Which is just, it's shocking.
Yeah, basically that's it. So in the month of November,
excluding dementia,
basically what happens is there's loads of charities that come together to raise awareness for men's mental health or men's health problems.
The leading cause of death
normally what happens for those who don't know, so men grow moustaches to raise awareness for health issues related to men, and those can be for things like prostate cancer, so raising more awareness for that, testicular cancer, and also male suicide. So in terms of Movember itself, I never knew it was related to men's male suicide. I always thought it was related to prostate cancer and testicular cancer. But I guess with the rise of mental health and specifically men's mental health problems, I think it's really, really good that that's been sort of added to the Movember initiative. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and I think that really lovely that Amit, our guest today, has said a fantastic quote. I think I'm going to keep reiterating it. Just check on your mates. That's all we need to do a bit more of, is just check in, and the question of how are you is so important, and to genuinely be asking, not just a quick how are you, fine, that's it. It's a genuine how are you, have you been okay, especially in times of COVID. I think it's just
one of the things I was reading about was that
for each other
it specifically affects, in terms of men and mental health, the reason why they're so at risk is because of like things like traditional gender roles. So men are sort of discouraged to express their emotions a lot more. Depression is often underdiagnosed, so that's probably something we need to think about as medics as well, and reevaluate. And I think in terms of Movember, it's really helped me
we will see you for our Christmas
think about men's mental health a bit more, and how I sort of make sure I ask about it when I'm doing my histories. But also, I think in my day-to-day life, I have asked my friends a lot more.
Thank you for coming on the show.
My male friends, whether they're okay, a bit more about their mental health.
You said show before, and now I'm like, oh, it's a
raised
show.
a bit more a lie in me that, oh my god, I haven't really asked these questions to them.
I'd say you guys are a show.
That's cute, thank you. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, hi everyone. My name is Amit. I am a microbiology student doing my master's, background in biochemistry. And I've known Eloise for quite a while. I've just met Kieran, but I'm here as the male to talk about male mental health.
It was quite hard, actually. I was trying to, as Kieran,
before you came on. So now that we've spoken about Amit, I guess we can sort of lead to the interview. So today we spoke to Amit, who is Eloise's friend, and he's kindly come on to our podcast today to speak about mental health, and specifically the issues surrounding men's mental health. Yeah, it really has, and I think emotions and that was really, really good interview. Highlights why Movember is so if you're interested, please keep listening. We need to have these conversations so that people can speak openly about their mental health and, you know, the problems that they're having, so that we can raise more awareness. So I'm really glad that you have come here today, Amit, to talk about it.
I'm glad I was your first choice, guys.
You were. There was a lot of panic texts going out being like, anybody feel free to like come on and talk about this. But so many people were just like, no, I just don't think I'm right to do it, or oh, it's a really touchy topic. And I was like, yeah, I know.
I think that's the point, isn't it?
Like... Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, that's why we want to talk about it. Anyway, so how would you basically define Movember to men in general? Because Movember is obviously like a big thing. There's lots of
different causes and stuff.
Yeah, I think Movember it's really just like a men's month, I would say. I wouldn't pin it down to a particular cause. I think there are a lot of different men specific things that go on during Movember. So like there's a lot of different mental health aspects to it. But there's also lots of different physical health aspects as well. I know there's a couple of my friends are raising money for different like testicular health causes. So I think it's mainly just a month for men, if I could put it like that. It's a very very archaic thing to say, but yeah, that's what it kind of boils down to, I think.
Do you feel? Sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's like, it's an opportunity for, well, it's one of the few opportunities, I guess, that men have to like really express like what is going on with them. So I see a lot of posts from my friends on social media during the time of November, which I wouldn't really see during the rest of the year. You know, with their pictures of their moustaches, and I think it's a, you know, it's something we actually need to talk more openly about some of these issues they bring up.
Do you feel as though November specifically is any different, therefore, to the rest of the year in terms of men's mental health? Like, do you feel as though when you go on social media and stuff, there's a lot more sort of awareness on compared to other months in the year?
I think so. I definitely agree with that. As November as a whole, because you go on social media and everyone's doing something for November. Like, you know, every other male friend is growing a moustache, you know, against better judgment. And it just seems like there's a lot more of a palaver. Well, I wouldn't say palaver, but there's a lot more of a fuss about it now, when it really should be an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
So it's like peaks and troughs, and it really comes to the peak, I guess, during November.
And so after November, do you feel as though in December you would like that to sort of continue through, or do you feel as though it's sort of the message would be, if it went on for too long, it sort of would be diluted?
Yeah, that's it's an issue with, especially with raising issues like that, of like I think the term's like sympathy fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of charities can suffer from this, and I've done a lot of charity work previously, where if you keep going on about particular issues, people just don't care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get statistics that are associated with mental health in particular, like, people kind of need to talk about this a lot. So
yeah.
I think it is something that should be spoken about more often. But yeah, we should keep in mind that sympathy fatigue can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
totally
so I was
agree.
going to say that obviously mental health affects everyone, and I think that there's a lot of stigma surrounding mental health in general, not just men's mental health, but mental health is something we all have. It's just like physical health. It's something that we should be aware of, and it's a good thing to talk about mental health. I don't know if you agree, Amit, that the stigma around it seems to come from mental illness.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm speaking to two medics here, so I'm preaching to the converted. But in the biopsychosocial model, physical health and mental health are they're your health. That's being healthy doesn't just mean that you've got a healthy body, but it also means that you've got a healthy mind. And having a mental illness kind of doesn't really compute with that kind of line of thinking, especially for a lot of men. They think, oh, if something's wrong with me, it's got to do with my body, rather than, oh, I'm feeling a bit down, but I'll get over it. Like, there's no that kind of thinking where your physical health and your mental health are the same. Just doesn't really seem to exist. And I think that's something that I mean, it is something we are getting better at thinking about, and I'm sure you two could probably speak in greater detail about that. But thinking about your mental health and mental illness even as things that are just an extension or even just part of your whole being health. So yeah, I think you're right.
Where do you think that sort of stems from? Because I know with being a woman and growing up, you're always encouraged to talk about your feelings a lot more compared to men. Do you feel as though, just a bit asking a bit personally, like when you were growing up, you were encouraged to focus on the physical rather than the emotional?
I think, well, in general, really, I was encouraged not to focus on anything, like just to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and carry on. And for a lot of the time, that's the kind of attitude that is required. Like, if you look at the things, like, everybody suffers things in life. Nobody can say that they've had a particularly easy life. Everybody faces challenges, but for some challenges, they really are a case of you need to power through. But when you're doing it for everything that's coming up, it starts to become a problem. It's a question of failing to ask for help because you've been conditioned to not ask for help. And that can be something that's really difficult for most people to come over. Like, asking for help is incredibly difficult, let alone, like, even if you are in a healthy state of mind.
Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine the strains that you would put yourself under to ask for help when you're not in a healthy state of mind. So it's God.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say that obviously, as two women on this podcast who are very friendly, we talk and we offload our feelings onto each other sometimes, don't we, Kieran?
Yeah.
Like, it's always a really healthy thing that we'll ring each other up and be like, I'm having a really shit day, or I'll ring up another friend. One of my friends is a pharmacist in Leeds, and she always rings me, and if she's having a wobble or if I'm having a wobble, just to kind of like give ourselves that support bubble to say, like, it's okay, it's all right that we're having a wobble, it's fine, and you just like bounce that off each other. Do you think that you can do that with your friends?
Okay, so in my 22, almost 23 years, I've probably had one or two conversations like that with my with my friends.
Really?
Yeah. Simply because we just distract ourselves with, the menialities of things. Like I've never, like, unless I can see, and when I have seen my friend being physically upset about something, it's not really in our nature or in our friendship to call each other up that often, to ask about, like, oh, hey, I'm having a shit day, or hey, like, X, Y, Z has happened and I'm feeling really bad. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of other, like, male friendship groups can attest to that that's just not a thing that happens. I wouldn't say, though, that it doesn't, like, we don't talk about our feelings in that kind of prescribed way, though. So, for example, like, and I'm going to make some generalizations here, do forgive me, but, like,
no.
Well, I'll apply it to my friend group. So, like, me and my friends, we play video games quite often, and back, like, especially during my undergrad, when we had a bit more time, that would kind of be the time when we're kind of thinking about playing the game, but then we're having a chat. So we kind of had to be preoccupied by doing something else to then kind of open up, because we weren't actively thinking about it. So, and I think that's something that a lot of people, I think, would agree with, in saying that, like, those are kind of the times when you are distracted, like when you're playing a video game, for example, that when you talk to your friends, you're not really thinking about what you're saying, but then at the same time, you're slowly getting things off your chest. And I know that's how I've told a couple of my friends, my close friends, some very difficult things about myself. And that's worked. So I think the prescription of, I'm going to call this friend up and ask how they're doing, works in certain scenarios. But I think the kind of mindless conversation where then you discuss how you're feeling, things like that, tends to be more common.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't even think of that. And if you think about how Movember is, like, with growing a moustache, and you're raising awareness about men's mental health, testicular cancer, prostate cancer, if you compare that to our previous episode where we were talking about, like, breast cancer, and it's like boobs everywhere, you can sort of see that sort of looking for a distraction to talk about something is kind of what we're doing with the mustache as well. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. When you frame it like that, absolutely.
Could I ask just a bit more about what you said previously? So you said that when you've offloaded to your friends, you've managed to get a response. What kind of response was it? What, quite a helpful one, or
it was supportive. Like, it wouldn't. So, again, generalizing here, but it was a response which wasn't kind of a validative response. It was more of a, okay, this is how we're going to fix this kind of response, which I appreciate works for some people, doesn't work for other people. But at the time, that's kind of what I needed to hear. Personally, that is the response that I responded best to. And I think, especially speaking to other male friends, like, it's kind of like that instinct to just problem solve straight away. And that's kind of what helped me through some difficult times, is where my friends kind of didn't pity me or anything like that, or they didn't be like, oh, that's all right. They didn't try to console me.
Yeah.
They just sat me down and said, all right, this is how we're going to fix this. So, and I think that's pretty much happened every time that's done. And I know that I've done that to my friends when they've come to me with an issue.
Would you?
That's really interesting.
Would you say that, let's say if it was the opposite now, and you could see that your friend was sort of in distress, do you feel like men ask outright, or do they wait for someone to sort of say something first?
I think it depends. It depends on the friendship.
Okay.
So there are certain friends that are, like, I would feel comfortable just going up and saying, hey, like, you've kind of been a bit withdrawn. Like, I haven't really seen you much. Like, what's going on? Is everything all right? And there are other friends where I really would have to wait for either someone else to bring it up, or wait for one of those distractions, just because I know it would make them feel uncomfortable. And to add to that, or to add to whatever problem they're going through by making them feel uncomfortable, I think would just push them further into not telling me. So it really is situational. It's like the equivalent of saying I'm okay, I think, when really you're not.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I was actually going to ask, because Amit and I are obviously friends, and I think that it's, I hope we are. God, can you imagine if you said no? Like, no, we're not. But what I would say is, have you ever thought about, because I know that you and I have sat down and had conversations before.
Yeah.
Not in terms of like mental health, but just checking in on each other. Do you think that when you're talking to a woman, it's a bit different to like your male friends?
Yes, definitely. It's
okay.
It's easier. It's easier
Is it?
Yes. It's often easier to bring up problems with my female friends than it is my male friends. With the exception of like my really, really close male friends. Like, yeah, it's been far easier to have conversations with women about mental health when compared to men. I couldn't tell you why. Like, I've got no idea. But perhaps it's just the demeanor. Perhaps it's just I know that women are more receptive to listening to these kind of things, or maybe in particular the women that I've spoken to. But yeah, it's now that you've raised that, yeah, I'd say that there is a difference.
Oh wow! I wonder whether that would work for whether you'd see like a male doctor about a problem compared to a female doctor about a problem. Then,
yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm unqualified to say that. You guys
no, you're not. You've been a patient. You know what it's like. I think one of the things I think that I've noticed when I've had these conversations with my friends, male or female, and in a general sense, is that when you have, I don't know whether it's just because women are more in touch with their emotions. They are more. I think it stems from the fact that back in the day, obviously, women obviously used to be called like hysterical and God knows what else, which. It's horrific, but also I think from the dawn of time, women have always been a little bit better about talking about their feelings and asking other people how they are. Maybe it's like the maternal care. I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with this, to be fair, but maybe it is that.
There could be some biochemical reason behind it.
It could be. Like, go on, you're the scientist, you can tell me. But I'm just thinking, like, because when I've had these conversations, I've never felt like I'm judging anyone or that they couldn't tell me anything. But to imagine maybe that because we have that kind of attitude and because we talk about it amongst our friends. I went to an all-girls school. We always used to talk about these things together. Like if anyone was anxious about an upcoming exam, we all used to like bitch. That's one of the best things I think sometimes is talk about things. That's terrible. I'm a horrible person. But I think that because we were always talking and gossiping and discussing how we feel, and I think it just becomes like second nature. So when you sit down with a guy who's maybe never done that before, maybe it's just a bit easier because you've already got a bit of an advantage. You already know what to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that kind of thing of what your default is really. Like, all right, let's play out like a hypothetical scenario. So like Eloise, if you were to call Kieran after this call's over, what's like the first few things that you'd ask her?
So, like in a general call, I think 9 times out of 10, I'm like, how are you doing? Are you okay?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a checkup call, right? Whereas like when I call my friends, like I'm going to pick one friend out here in particular, every time I call him, I'm like asking how he is for like a small portion of that conversation. And for the rest of it, we're talking about something completely asinine, like, I don't know, the stock market or like this cool game we're playing, like something completely far removed. But it's only until we're doing that activity, so like whether we're like playing a game together or we're like just doing something else, and then we've got our brains engaged doing something else, then we start to talk about, oh yeah, like the other day this happened and that bothered me, or the other day, or like this is on my mind. So I think it's the mechanism really of how these conversations are started. So like in that sense, Eloise, like when we put it in that scenario, you've got the easier access to speaking about your feelings, whereas in my example at least, I've kind of got that preliminary step
before you go in. It's almost like you're signposting, which is for the medical students out there listening, you're obviously like signposting your way in, when actually women just feel like, I know, for example, if I bumped into you right now, if I was walking up to you, I'd just be like, oh, how's your partner? Like, I would just straight away ask, how are you both? Like, and it's not a prying question. I'm genuinely interested to know how you both are.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes I'm far more direct, and I think probably women are more direct in the sense of that, because we're nosy buggers. We just want to check in, make sure you're all right. But also because we're so direct, I think it maybe is easier. But you're right, men signpost their way in.
Yeah.
And that's no ways better or worse. It's just a different way of approaching it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, it's perhaps just like it's a way of easing yourself into the conversation. Like, unless something catastrophically bad happened, I wouldn't call up my friend and tell him, just start like unloading on them. There'd be a situation where I like we go and do something, like we go out for a drink. Well, not on lockdown, but in normal times.
One day it'll happen. We can go for a drink again, Anna.
Oh my God, in 2050. Yeah, so it'll be like there'd be some preliminary, hey, do you want to go do X, or hey, do you want to play a game, or do this, do that, and then we talk. So yeah.
Do you feel like as you've grown older that's become more obvious? Like when you were a kid, do you feel like that was still the case where you need to go and do something to open up, or has it just happened as you've grown older?
Now, I don't know if this is myself getting better at recognizing when I'm speaking about my emotions, but I can tell you that going to a inner city school, we're going to call it, going to an inner city school, speaking about your emotions as a male was a big no-no.
Wow.
So I perhaps did not do that. At least I didn't do it visibly. And some of my best friends that I've kept from school, I can now speak to them about these issues, but I would have never spoken to them about them back in school. Like, in no way. So any issues that I was having, I kept them to myself. And I think a lot of my male friends would attest to that speaking about your emotions in school, especially a school where I went to, was a big no-no. So, yeah.
Did you ever open up to your family then? Were you more likely to open up to them?
Oh, no, you might guess from my name, I am Asian. No way.
Yeah.
No way. No way.
That's not funny. We shouldn't be laughing, but it is a little bit like, no. But it's also like, that's actually probably quite bad.
Being male, being Asian, nah, no chance. But in a way, like, it's kind of just been instilled from not by me not being able to speak to my family about this, but in the sense that, you know, you watch your parents go through whatever, like difficulties or whatnot, and keep a straight face on. And in my mind, I was like, well, I've seen them do that. Why can't I do that? Like, I don't have to bother them with my business. They're dealing with far worse in my perception. It's only recently where I've been like, oh yeah, hey mom, this is bothering me, that is bothering me, and they've been like, yeah, like, why haven't you spoken to us about this? This is something you can talk about. So I think it's definitely making that conversation is more difficult than having the conversation. I could say, like, you know, in perhaps more traditional Asian households, having the conversation would also be very difficult. Like, there are some still quite stigmatized, like mental health is still quite heavily stigmatized.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's for me, in my case, it was the courage to say that something was wrong rather than saying what was wrong.
Do you feel as though the Movember initiative still needs to be sort of explored within the Asian community a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say because, like, you know, if we boil it down to its essence of facial hair growing.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah,
if we boil it down to facial hair growing, you know, it's something that a lot of Asians can get behind.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be, well, I know, like, in particular in South Asian culture, like, the mustache is a very important part of being a man.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so if you go to, like, parts of, like, South India, having a moustache is really important, and you won't see any men there without a moustache. And like you might see,
so interesting.
Yeah, and if you go to like other parts of like Asia, you'll see like guys like taking really good care of their beards. Now I know we're getting away from the point of what the point behind Movember is, but it's a good gateway into it.
Yeah.
Because if we get people starting with that, then slowly bring them in with, hey, like, have you checked on your physical health? Have you checked on like your mates? It's like a slow introduction. Because I can say like with some confidence that my other Asian friends, they're not really interested in Movember. It's not really, it's nothing has appealed to them from what they've seen. Like nothing on social media, none of the charity behind it. And I think there's more to be done in not only encompassing Asian men, but everyone. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, so I've done how many weeks now? 4, 8, nearly 12 weeks of GP placement throughout my entire medical school career. And in GP, there's always going to have a lot of mental health as part of GP. You will see a lot of it. And I can very confidently say that I'm not even in a white dominant area. Like, that's not where I am. I have never had a person from an Asian ethnicity come in and talk to me about their mental health. Not once.
Yeah. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
it's baffling. It's weird because the crisis team, when I worked very closely with that, and for anyone who doesn't know what crisis is the team that basically we call when we are fearful someone's going to harm themselves for any way. Patients can call, or you can be referred by your GP. It's a 24-hour hotline. And the majority of the team that were doctors were Asian.
It's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I literally was like, what? And like, not in terms of anything other than the doctor, the consultant, he was lovely, and he was like, it's so important. And there was quite a lot of black doctors there, and I was like, this is amazing to see, because I don't think I've had a single patient of these ethnicities ever sit and tell me, oh, I feel a bit low. And yet you're all here helping other people, and they were like, yeah, we just need to break that stigma. And I was like, that's just so interesting to see.
Yeah. It's breaking the stigma is the difficult part. And I've seen people who have like from in both states, like before stigma and after stigma, and they're two completely different people. Like once you give these people a mouthpiece almost to express their feelings, it's like all that repression, all that anxiety, it's just let go because they have someone to talk to. And not only do they have someone to talk to, but there's no fear that whatever they say they're going to be judged about. A lot of, and again, not to make this a discussion just about Asian people, but in the Asian community, a lot of it's to do with face, like what will people say? So let's say if I was from a more conservative Asian background, I went to the doctor to speak to them about, let's say I had a mental health issue. My parents would tell me, don't go, what will people say? Like you're going to the doctor because there's something wrong with you, or there's this wrong with you, there's that wrong with you. It's all about keeping this image of face. So once we break that, once we have a more almost individualist mindset, then we can start to think about like, improving these people's mental health. But it really stems from that. What do other people think of not only myself, but my family?
Wow. So see, that's so interesting, because what I was going to say is that on this podcast, obviously talking about mental health, I would have always said that everyone has mental health, and mental health is a fluctuating state. Nobody stays at this one level their entire life. We have, like you said before, peaks and troughs. And just because you're in a trough doesn't mean that you have a mental illness. And one of the things that I was going to talk about today is the doctors and I have been speaking about this. It's poorly phrased and the wrong use of words. So the example I always give is that I hear 9 times out of 10, if I'm talking to a patient who they've come in and they're like, oh, I think I'm depressed. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a big word to be using, because depression is a mental health illness. It's not just something that you dabble in. And what I would say is that it's kind of like saying, I've missed a meal. I've never heard someone say, oh, I've not eaten lunch yet. God, I'm hypoglycemic. Like, I've never heard that. And I'm like, why are you using this word? Just because you might have depression, but that is an illness that, we would have to really delve in deep. We'd have to investigate a lot versus you just saying, I'm feeling a bit low or a bit down today, or I've been feeling down for a couple of days now and I don't know why. And I think because of that, the wrong use of words, and it happens far more often, especially with the term depression. I hear it all the time, like so colloquially used, like, oh, I'm depressed. And I'm like, can we not say that? Like, unless you genuinely are diagnosed with this condition, can you not say that? Because one, I think there's a part of it that you are almost, how do I phrase this? By using it so colloquially, you're devaluing someone who actually does suffer from this and is in crushing states of depression, who need medication and therapy, who suffer from it for a really long time. I would never it's not like I'd ever call myself diabetic, because I'm not. My sugars go up and down just like everyone. You get hangry. It's a normal thing. But I would never use that because I know I'm not, I don't have that medical condition, just the same as I don't have that mental illness. I just have a low day.
I think
it's
carry on.
I think it's really, really important, especially that, like, again, mental health and physical health are equal to each other, and your state of being in physical health is, it fluctuates. You can either be fine one day, not fine the other, but then all right the day after. But people think that mental health is removed from that. Like, you can be, having your ups and downs is just, it doesn't compute. So it's all about trying to break that almost. And it's also in the sense that approaching help, and I've just thought of this while you were speaking, that, like, asking for help with mental health is more difficult, and especially when you're going to a GP. And that's because, like, I know a lot of people still have the assumption that, oh, I'm going to the GP or I'm going to the doctors, therefore something is wrong with me. Now, whether people equating having a mental health issue as something is wrong with them, I don't know. But I would definitely err on the side of saying people don't equate those two things. People don't think that it's having a mental health problem is an effect of their whole being health. So
yeah, they need to get better at doing that. They need to, that's what I mean, like, in terms of, you need to be careful when using these words, and you need to be careful, because it's great that we're talking about it and it's wonderful, but I think there's been so many misuse of the words that I'm like, oh, I don't think you should be saying that. Nobody turns around and says, like, oh, I'm manic. You don't say that. It's just, so why do we use depression in such a colloquial way? And when you go to the doctors, 9 times out of 10, the person sitting on my couch, I normally would say, like, couch, I'm not a psychiatrist, a chair. I'm like, oh, if you just come in for, like, your MOT. And they're like, yeah, just a quick, like, people over the age of 50 normally come in at that age for, like, an MOT type check, where they just get top to toe review, have their bloods taken, are you all right, have an ECG, just have a chat, just check in at the doctors. And I think that so much more is said in those conversations, to be like, I'm fine, I'm just coming in just to have my MOT. And you can be perfectly healthy. The doctor's not going to go searching for something unless you come in and say, oh, I think I might be struggling a bit, or I've had some symptoms of X, Y, or Z. I think that coming to the doctors needs to be a bit more of a general, it's just a normal thing. I'm just going to the doctors, I just need to go and have a chat about something. Like, it shouldn't just be a problem, if that makes sense.
It's what they're there for. Like, they didn't spend the whole 5 years in medical school for you not to come.
6.
Oh, yeah, 6.
Exactly. And you just, like, you can tell me, of all the people in the world, you can tell me, because I don't mind, and it's got nothing, I'm never going to judge or anything. And I think also, I wonder if you might agree, Amit, do you think when people go in and speak about mental health issues, obviously I'm not even insinuating that you have, or maybe some friends have, do you always have a thought in your head that they're going to put me on medication, they're going to send me to therapy?
Yeah.
Oh God. And, like, because even to me that's a little bit scary to think, like, oh, I'm going to be on medication for my mood, that's really not good.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then in my mind it will play up like, oh, like, why am I going to the doctor for this? Like, I don't need medication. I'm fine. When in reality, like, if medication helps, then medication helps. Like, again, that's why it was invented. So, yeah, it's breaking that stigma almost. Even for myself, thinking like, hey, I'm going to go to the doctor. If he gives me medication for this thing, sure, I'll take it. It's like going to the pharmacist and asking for getting some over-the-counter medicine. Like,
yeah, if I whacked you over the head with a frying pan and you took some paracetamol.
Yeah, that's
I think that's quite warranted.
Yeah, exactly. So if there's something wrong with my mental state, then yeah, of course I'm gonna, like, if medication helps, it should be a good idea to take it. Ultimately, like, mental health is caused by like a biochemistry problem. It's an imbalance of chemicals in your brain. So if other chemicals, medicine, helps you fix that, then we should try and alleviate the idea that taking this medicine is bad. Like you just said, we take paracetamol, we take other painkillers if we get a physical injury. Why don't we do the same for mental injuries?
I was going to ask, even just before that, so like when I've had a bad day, I know I need chocolate to make myself feel better and stuff like that. And I feel like a lot of women, for instance, will run a bath, you know, go and get their hair done, stuff like. And I was just wondering whether men do the same thing. So do men, number one, acknowledge I'm having a bad day, I need to pick myself up, or do they just not and carry on and ignore it?
So this is something I've only recently started doing, and not running a bath because I don't have the facilities for that. But yeah, so I think that brings us like onto the topic really of self-care.
Yeah.
Like you just said, like women tend to like do all these, like, a bath, like pampering themselves a little bit. Like, and I've bought my partner like a little self-care kit if she's feeling down. But when you look out there for like if I were to look up men's self-care kit, I doubt I'd find as much when you look up something like compared to like a women's, or just if you just put in self-care kit, it's all marketed.
Okay, I'm literally doing it. I'm literally doing it. Oh, there's some nice things. Oh, a men's self-care box from Etsy. Ooh. Hang on.
What's it got in
I'm expecting one of these, Eloise.
Oh, men's hamper. All right, ready. Hang on. So we have coffee. We have
increased anxiety levels.
Great.
Yeah, that's not helpful, isn't it? We have what else do we have? We have a pair of socks. That's not really that soothing. A mini body wash, a green and black mini chocolate bar, mint, a keyring bottle opener. I don't know what that's.
That's to self-medicate yourself with alcohol.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not. Let's go back. Let's see if there's some really. Oh, there's a price drop currently. That's Black Friday. Men's care bundle, which includes so toothpaste and whitening.
Okay, right.
Beard care, beard oil.
Right.
Is that a thing?
I mean,
didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
It's not really the same though, is it?
No.
I kind of do agree with you there. There's a men's cave. Ooh. Ooh. No, there's really nothing. It's just a couple of smellies, but nothing.
Like nothing. It's just there's nothing available. So like for me, the idea of like if I've come home from uni, I've like had a rough day, or like, you know, I've got some marks back from something that I haven't done too great in. Like, my first thought is I'm getting Mackies because food. Why not? Like, that's the equivalent of having chocolate. Like, cool. Let's get some junk. And then my second thought is let me just do something completely mindless. So just watching TV or playing video games or just doing something to take my stress away. But before I learned that I needed to look after myself mentally, whenever I had a bad day, my response to it was, hey, let's do some more work. In a sense of like, oh, this did really badly, so I need to work harder. That didn't really work out so well. And I just found myself burning out easier, especially with uni work. I found myself like being more stressed and more anxious just because I was pushing myself, working, 18-hour days for no good reason, when I could have been working a regular amount of hours for like uni stuff and then taking time for myself. Now I'm glad that I've recognized that I need some me time. So like, for example, this evening, going to be watching Strictly because I like doing that.
Ooh, but, who do you want to win?
Oh, that's a tough one. Oh, you put me on the spot there.
I want Ranveer to win. if she's still in there.
I kind of want her to win as well, just so that she can finally admit there's something going on between her and Giovanni.
Yeah.
If that's happening, the Strictly curse is happening. We have divulged, but oh my goodness. That is definitely a curse, isn't it?
It's just so bait. Like, yeah. Anyway.
That's so interesting.
So, yeah, men's self-care is terrible. So.
But I think, how do you get to that point? So anyone listening who doesn't feel like they know when to give themselves like a pick-me-up, like how did you get to that point where you were like, okay, I feel like shit today, I need to do something good about it to make myself feel better?
For me, it's more of like I kind of like tally the events, like of what's happened and what's going to happen. So like I'll lay out a day then. So let's say in the morning I had classes and they didn't go so well, and I had CBL and that didn't go so well either, and then I got marks and that didn't go so well either. So let's say that's already happened, but I know like in the evening, if it wasn't lockdown times, I was going out with some friends.
Yay.
I wouldn't choose to do like a self-care thing then, because I had something to look forward to.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have anything to look forward to, like if I had like just finished a day of uni and had just an empty evening of nothing, then I'd choose, instead of just sitting there doing nothing, let me just choose to relax. So I think it's about looking for that time where you can choose to fill it with stuff that will make you anxious, or choose to fill it with things that will, like, you know, not only calm you down but set you up for the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a saying that I like to not only tell myself but tell other people as well, that this too shall pass. Like everybody has their bad days, but the bad days don't last forever.
Yeah, that's true.
It will pass.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I say that sometimes to myself. I'm like, it's fine. It'll be fine. It'll go away when there's been like a bad day, and I think that does help a little bit.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That's
now, just in terms of in terms of going out, because that's an interesting thing that you said. Like, obviously, I have been out with you. we can drink. We oh my god, we can drink, which is a problem. It's not. It's just.
It is.
What do you think in terms of mental health the next day after drinking?
It's that's a bit of a sticky one, really, because provided you drink in moderation and you are with a sensible group of friends,
oh, not me then,
and you're not impacting the rest of your life, I don't see anything wrong with going out, like having a couple of drinks with some friends, having a good time, like provided you're being sensible and not emptying your bank account. Yeah, sure. I'm all for like going out on a night on the town, provided it's legal, going out. But it becomes a problem when that's your only form of like care or only time off. Like, you know, binge drinking is bad. Like there's no other way of putting it. It's bad. Like,
oh no, it definitely is.
So doing it once, cool, whatever. Twice, all right, we're starting to push it here. When it becomes a habit, then not only do you face becoming dependent on alcohol, but then you're starting to see some physical like problems starting to arise. Your liver can only take so much. So it's dangerous to rely on going out as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
It's a great way to get out and de-stress, but it's important to remember that having fun doesn't just mean having a drink. Like very often now, if I know I've got like work the next day, for example, or I know if I've got to do something important the next day, if I go out with friends, I might have a non-alcoholic beverage, and I've got no shame in going up to the bar asking for a virgin mojito. Like I'm confident in my masculinity enough to sit there and sip my cocktail or mocktail even. But yeah, turning to the bottle all the time is generally not a good idea. I'm not saying that you shouldn't drink.
Yeah.
Because me of all people knows that, like, yeah, a drink can help at times, but relying on it, self-medicating with it, is just not a good idea.
Do you feel as though friends are quite good at pointing it out if you were going down that route, or would they not be comfortable with doing that?
I think this depends on your friend group and how it really depends on the friend group, because some friends can really, like, they will point it out to you flat out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the kind of shame filter there is gone. So yeah, like, I know if I went out with some friends like consistently, they've been like, no, we got to stop, we got to take a couple of nights break, we got to just, and this happened recently as well, where I was just like, some set of friends were like, no, we got to chill out and have a break. But then I know there are other friends where if I'm going out as a coping mechanism, I can't be selfish in thinking that I'm the only one going through a bad time. It's they're using it as well, so it can kind of become a viscous cycle because they don't want this to stop. I'm not in a position of wanting it to stop, so it kind of just becomes this kind of, mess of going out every opportunity available and getting drunk with no one saying anything, because that's their only coping mechanism. So I think it's important to try and maintain a good head about these things, in the sense that, yeah, drinking is bad if you do it a lot.
Yeah. And I guess it just shows about communication and stuff. So like talking's, I guess, key to make sure your friends don't go down that road.
Exactly. And like very often with alcohol, like, you tend to speak your mind when you're on alcohol.
Yep.
So if you use alcohol to enable these conversations, I think that can be, a great way of speaking, like at least breaking the ice, like saying, having a drink and having a drunk conversation, like, hey, XYZ, I feel crap about it. But what I've tended to do, and this has worked out quite well in the past for me, as I've said that you and I are not in a good state to have this conversation, or if we have had this conversation, I'm like, I want to speak to you about this tomorrow. And I've gone up back to those friends and I've spoken the next day when we haven't had a drink, but we just have some food or whatever. And because they've already like kind of opened up to me a little bit, I can then go and have that conversation with them.
That's such a good idea. I was going to say earlier, like, if you do open your heart out to somebody whilst they're drunk, you wake up in the morning feeling like, oh my God, what have I said? And then people pretend like they don't know, they don't know what's going on. Like they don't even talk about it again. It never gets brought up. So I think it's really good that you say that you're going to follow up when you're probably sober.
I've got the notes in my note section on my phone, saying, speak to this person about this tomorrow.
Oh my God, you told me about that. I remember you and I speaking about that. You'd be like, I'm writing this in my notes, and I was like, what about? I mean, you were like, we'll talk about it tomorrow when we're both like sober. And it was something really silly, like it was something that we both had to email or something, but you wrote it in your notes, and I was like, oh, so you remembered it. It was very good.
Yeah, just because I know that there's a point where I don't remember, so probably
but
best if it's written down.
One of the things that we did, Kieran, last year was Amit and I worked together quite closely in terms of one of the jobs that we do at university, and it was, I don't know how I came up with it, but we just organised what we called a Sunday circle, where we met up as a group of everybody who worked together on a Sunday, had a couple of drinks, like nothing, it was never a heavy night, it was always like one or two, with food, where we could sit and chat about stuff and just catch up from the week. We haven't been able to do it this year at all with COVID.
Yeah. We had one, but that was it.
I know, it was rubbish, wasn't it? And but it turned out like this thing, everybody really liked it, and everybody liked coming and like talking, and it was just like, especially with the job that we do, it's quite a stressful job. It's like lots of quite hard, difficult cases and things. So it was really quite nice. I'm maybe speaking a bit too much now, Amit. You can say no, it was shit, Eloise.
No, I actually really enjoyed it because, again, we faced some things that we couldn't, and I won't go into too much detail, but there were some things that it was just good to get off your chest, and there was no opportunity otherwise to talk about these things, especially like when we're not supposed to talk about it to anybody else anyway. But yeah, it was just this good opportunity to sit down with some friends. Yes, there were drinks involved, but not everybody drank. Most people just ate.
No. Yeah, we did. We had food. It was nice.
Yeah, and we just sat in the corner of this nice little pub, had an atta, won the pub quiz once. That was quite
we
funny.
Did. Oh my god,
we weren't even supposed to do it. But we
literally all sat there like, oh my god, and they just started doing it. And we were like, okay, we'll join in, and won.
Wow.
So I think that maybe for anyone out there who's like, I don't know how to like broach this conversation, just doing it in like a very neutral setting. I think we've had some quite deep conversations in that Sunday circle, which were never. I don't think that was ever my plan. It was just an idea for us to meet up and just catch up with a week, because working in different teams, we don't necessarily see each other all the time.
Yeah.
So that was where it really originally stemmed from, to literally becoming a support kind of like, you're doing really well.
Almost.
It was, and it's very much a, you're doing really well, keep doing it, or I would have done the same in this situation. And it was really nice to hear, like, especially when I hadn't done the job before, to have senior people to discuss this with, like, would you have done the same? And they're like, yeah, no, I would have. And then it was like, okay, a bit of reassurance and reaffirming.
Yeah, I remember that was brought up quite a lot last year, because you were new at the time, and I'd done it for a year, and there are a lot of things that not only yourself brought up, but other newer members, and it was good to have that kind of like reassurance from people who've done it before. And be like, yeah, you're good, don't worry about it. It's just something that happens. Yeah. So,
would you have any tips for? Because obviously freshers going to university, they've with COVID and stuff, they're not going to have that kind of opportunity, and I think it's really good to have that support network away from home at uni, especially. Would you have any sort of tips for them?
Right, and my heart really does go out to these freshers now, because they didn't have that freshers experience that I'm sure all of us had. So my first point would be try and get on with your flatmates if that's possible. Like, you will spend a lot of time with them, so it's easiest to find those people closest to you, if that makes sense. Like, you live with them, try and build some rapport with them, like try and open up to them, do like movie nights, meals, like you're all in the same space. If that's not really an option, like, there are societies that are doing things online. Granted, it's not the same as meeting up with these people, and it's not the same as going to like society events, but at the same time, it is something. It's something that, and I know that a lot of friends that still are involved in societies, they're all running events which are trying to reach out to newer students to get them involved. And thirdly, and I'd say this is a pretty important one, is don't forget your friends from back home, or if you're just coming straight from college or sixth form, they're probably in a similar boat to you in the sense that they're isolated in their university if they didn't join you at yours. So we've got things like Skype, we've got Discord, we've got all these other calling things that we can use. Like, have a game night, like play some what was it, Among Us. Play that, like get something going where like you guys can meet up like once a week or something. Just keep all, like, you've got that support network that you trust already. So try and utilize that. I know, so for example, I've got I mentioned Among Us because my friends from my undergrad who have all left now, we every Wednesday we all play Among Us together, and it's like a silly little game we play on our phones, but it's just a way of us all chatting, and it's just like old times. So it's really like utilizing the friends we've already got for that support network as well. So yeah, that's
really, really helpful, actually. I guess I would add to that and completely agree to everything you've said there, but keep trying as well. So if you go to one thing and you don't like it, just like keep trying until and if you don't like it afterwards, that's fine. But I know for me it takes a while to get to like doing stuff, and so don't get disheartened by the first time you go to any of these events and stuff.
If you don't find your best friend at uni, that's okay, that is fine, because I mean, it took me how many years? 4 years to find these two lovely people.
Hey.
And it just, I know, like, and I said this to Kieran, like when I first met Kieran, I was so just like on my own. I was just an island, like I didn't really talk to very many people in terms of like in medicine. I was quite reserved about it because I've been burnt before, and I was like, I'm just not gonna. Anyway, she comes in, thinks she's the teacher, And I was just like, oh my God, she's not the teacher. She's another student from a different place. And when we started chatting, it was almost like it was like an instant click. And I was like, where have you been the last 4 years? So if you're in that same position, because I mean, it took me so long to find, like, obviously the group that we're in, Amit, and then Kieran and I have been friends. And it was like, if you don't necessarily find them like straight away, just bear with, because there are people like you out there, and you will come across some people who really will make your mental health shit because they're not very nice people. But plow through and just keep looking. I think that's the best thing to do, and don't be put off doing things. I could have so easily not intercalated because of some horrible people. And if I'd literally at one point, I remember sitting down being like, I'm not going to intercalate, I'm just going to finish, I just want to get out of here, I don't want to do this. And then one of my teachers, he came and sat down next to me and he was like, you're going to let this one person change your entire life. This is the plan you've had, and it's always been what you've wanted to do. And because of how that person's affected you, you're going to change that. And I was like, oh, well, maybe not. And he was like, I think that's really silly if you did that. And now I would never have met either of you if I'd been in that mental state of I just want to get out of here and just gone with that plan. I would never have met you both.
Aww.
And that's really, well, thanks, but it's true. And it's just like, even if you're on a path that you're finding a bit alone and you're a bit isolated and you feel like, oh God, I'm doing the wrong thing, like, just try and persevere a little bit. If it's completely wrong, obviously jump ship, but if not, just try and realize that there are going to be people that will come into your life that will be similar to you, and then you can rely on them and you can talk to them. And I think that was my main message, that you're not going to be alone forever if you can't find your uni friends in that first week of freshers.
Yeah.
It's like a statistical likelihood almost that, you might not find them instantly, but there are so many people at university, you will find at least one other person that you get on with. Like, it kind of has to happen. There's such a variety of people. Like I always said, like it won't happen instantly, but it'll happen soon enough. Mm-hmm. So... yeah,
and if not, poach them from another uni like I did with Kieran.
And yeah, I totally agree with that. I kind of want to bring it back to men's mental health now. Sorry, I went on a tangent by asking you that question.
Right.
So how would you say that we can sort of improve men's mental health as a society? Like, is there any things in particular you would say we can do better as like women and men? Or anything doctors can do that would be better?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it kind of requires, it's not really like let's do X, Y, Z and fix the problem. Like there's centuries of like stigma associated with men's mental health, in the sense that like, oh, he's a man, he'll get over it. Boys don't cry. There's still so much of that stigma associated with men's mental health that I think it'd be unwise of me just to say, oh yeah, we should do this. But in that same sense, it doesn't mean that we can't try. So I think first things first is we need to find ways for it to make it more approachable for men to talk about mental health. Now, in that sense, like I've discussed before, like men and women talk about mental health very differently, and different things work for them. Like I said during the podcast, that I tend to talk about it best when I've got a distraction. So I think encouraging these conversations, or like acknowledging that what's going on in these like distraction events, is like a good way of being like, hey, you might not know it already, but you guys are talking about your mental health. Here's like, whilst you're doing this, maybe ask about this, speak to this about your friends. Like one campaign I do really like, or one message I do really like, is like, check on your mates. Because it's just a simple thing. Like, hey, how are you? Whilst you're doing something else. Like, it's not strenuous, it's not arduous. And I think that's the main thing I'd say, especially to men. Like, check on your mates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if you are doing something else. For women, I would say, and now I'm sure you're both very excellent at doing it. Like, I know whenever I've spoken to Eloise about something, like, she's been the best listener. So it's just about being aware that when a man comes to you like to speak to you about something, generally at the state where they think it's super bad, because at that point, I know in my experience at least, they probably wouldn't have told you otherwise. So be prepared to not receive the worst, but be prepared to see that this person that's come to you won't really be in the right frame of mind, and they perhaps might not be coherent in their thoughts, or they'll need more support than they think they do. So if a man does open up to you, just be ready to think that, hey, they probably haven't opened up to anyone else before. So I think that's an important distinction to make. This isn't to say that, women should go around babying all men and making sure that, everyone's all right. Yeah. No, I'm certainly not insinuating that. But just for the fact that if they have spoken to you about something, they might not have spoken to anyone else about this problem, just as you probably would have spoken to your best friend 5 minutes ago about something that was eating away at you. So just keep that in mind. And then for society as a whole, I would say that whilst the current initiatives for trying to raise the profile of mental health are good, it just needs to keep going. Like, if we look at all the statistics, men are, more likely to complete suicide when compared to there are more women who attempt suicide. Like, that's just a statistic. But when we look at statistics like that, we kind of have to think, okay, what solutions can we put in place? So there needs to be more done in the way of like charitable efforts, more things like Movember, where it's not just hey, we're going to do this for this time and then just forget about it for the rest of the year. Kind of needs to be something that's ongoing. Like the whole check on your mate can't just be check on your mate in November.
Yeah,
it doesn't really work. So yeah, those are just mine thoughts. But like I said, like there is centuries of stigma associated with guys talking about their feelings, essentially. So it won't be an easy problem to fix, but I hope by more people talking about it, and I hope by me talking about it today, I can at least encourage somebody to go to their friends or their friends to check up on them.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was just going to say thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. I think it's, especially with the points that we've talked about, we've said how it's not that easy to discuss it. You've been fabulous at it, and you've come on and you just explained it so beautifully. And
thank you.
I think if this podcast helps one person, that would be amazing. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's never about masses. It's just about making small changes. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. Kieran, did you have another question?
I was going to ask about sort of when you become a dad in the future, not in the near future.
Oh my God.
Would there be anything that you do differently in terms of parenting? Have you ever thought about doing anything differently, or what you'd like to do to sort of make sure that you bring up a child that's able to speak about their mental health a bit more?
Oh my God.
Oh man.
Great way to end it.
Wow, I think that's a great question though. I think yes, it'll be important for me to tell my potential children. I'm going to say my potential children.
Future children.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go with that. Future children. Yeah, it'll be important for me to tell them that, like, yeah, it is important to talk about these things. Like, I've always, I've been very well supported by my family, and I think that I would want my own family to have that same support. So perhaps teaching them things like asking if someone's okay, like alongside, like it should be something that's baked into them, like basic manners. So checking up on your friends, seeing how someone else is doing, acknowledging when someone else isn't doing well, not only physically but mentally. I think these are all things that, it's important to teach. So it will be something that I have to learn about. I am still quite a way away from having children, hopefully. Unless, unless nothing.
Don't. I can't be made an auntie again this year. I've already been made an auntie twice. I'm done.
I have to become at least some kind of doctor before then. So, be that a medical doctor or a PhD doctor. So,
oh, bless. Yeah. Thank you so much for answering that. I just thought it was something that I was talking about the other day with my friends, and I just thought I'd like to hear the male side of this. I do think there's a lot of women do think about parenting a lot more than men from my from the people I've spoken to. I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
No, I think that's an absolutely valid thing to say. Like before then, that had never crossed my mind. So it's a good thing to point out.
Yeah, I think it's a nice place to end as well. Like your future children are future children, as in like the three of us separately, not together. Just to clarify for other partners out there. I think for our children, hopefully it'll be a conversation that is less stigmatized and that we can have with them, and it will be great to see the change. Should we be still wanting to talk in the next 20 years, maybe we should do a mental health 2.0 and actually have the discussion about our kids. See what actually happens in terms of mental health and how it'll change. I love how Kieran is absolutely lolling at that. But thank you again for so much for coming on. We've thoroughly enjoyed having you. It's been such a great conversation. Is there anything you'd like to say, Amit, to wrap up? Any place people might want to find you or talk to you?
Well, am I allowed to plug stuff? I didn't know that.
You can plug stuff. We love it.
Oh God! All right, hold on. Let me look it up real quick. Hi everybody. I'm Amit. Whilst trying to be a microbiologist, I'm also trying to be TikTok famous. So you can find me on TikTok at Men-tal Health. That's at Amit HALKH. Yes, go find me on TikTok if you want really stupid memes. But
oh my God, that's do that so now.
Funny. Are you doing? You have TikTok?
Yeah. Well, I decided that whilst I want to be some kind of doctor, be that medical or otherwise, to really enrich the human population, I decided I also really want a Lamborghini. So.
You're not going to get that as a medical doctor, unfortunately.
I want my cake and I want to be able to eat it too. So TikTok is how I'm going to start.
So if you'd like to see Amit having a good dance and a boogie on TikTok.
No, it's silly science memes. It's really silly science memes. That's one I rated all the university's hand sanitizers. So it's got like 900 views. Like
that's exciting. That's actually really good. That's really good. All right then. Well, we will wrap it up here, and thank you so much again. And everyone check them out on TikTok.